Welcome to Kart Class, brought to you by 18 times Australian champion David Serra. Kart Class strives to give kart racing drivers the fundamental driving skills, kart setup, and the mindset required to take you from beginner to winner. Your host David Serra has over 25 years experience in kart racing and is the most successful driver in Australian history.
G'day guys, and welcome back to another episode of our Kart Class podcast. I'm your host, 18-time Australian champion David Serra, and today's discussion is going to be all about the different engines in kart racing. So depending on our age and sometimes our weight, we can have different engines to suit different categories. Now that sort of starts from, we've got some 4-stroke engines, predominantly we've got 2-stroke engines, and now they're going to be different CC for the different performance levels and different age brackets that the kids compared to the senior drivers are going to be in. When we're looking to some of our engine manufacturers, we're looking at Rotax, which is a large Austrian brand, and they've got an engine that starts off all the way in a micro category, so from that 6 to 7 age bracket, all the way through to your senior ranks. So you can use that same sort of engine, just changing the barrels and the radiator to suit the different categories as you're moving up through the ranks. So what's really cool about using the same engine all the way through is obviously that limits the amount of costs to keep, rather than selling an engine, having to buy a new one each time, you can just buy an upgrade kit. And so it's a 125cc engine. And the way they do it with the cadet class is they just have a restrictor plate between the exhaust pipe and the engine. And that just restricts the amount of performance and go through. So pretty cool for our younger kids. They can have a restrictor to start off with, and they take that engine all the way through their junior categories and into their senior categories as well. We're looking at our next engine manufacturer. We've got the IAMI brand. So they're out of Italy, and same thing. They produce different engines. They've got air-cooled engines, and they've also got water-cooled engines. So with their air-cooled range, it's a 100cc engine, air-cooled. So they're sort of getting towards that, I don't know, at a rough guess, 170 to 180, 200 degrees Celsius. And they also provide a water-cooled engine. So that's a 125cc engine. And with the water-cooled engine, they're going to be sort of running between that 50 to 60 degrees for their optimal performance. So again, IAMI, massive manufacturer when it comes to engines, providing both that water-cooled and the air-cooled, and they're going to be suiting different categories as well. So they've got a little IAMI Swift engine, a micro Swift engine for the cadet classes. Again, tunable carburation on those ones, so you can actually alter the amount of fuel going through the carburetor. Where when we're talking about our Rotax engines before, that's a fixed jet. So whatever you start the session with, you have to actually change it outside of the kart, so you can't be driving and alter the engine carburation. So with the IAMI engines, you've got that carburetor there. You can change the mixtures on the fly if you need some more fuel for out of the corners. You can alter the jets. It's also got a high-speed jet for down the straights as well. One of our other major engine manufacturers is the Vortex brand, again out of Italy. They provide engines between the air-cooled engines for our cadet classes, so little Vortex mini rock engines, which has got huge numbers around the world, especially in Italy, and also we use them out in Australia and also New Zealand. So a really cool little engine. We use a restrictor plate to go from our micro class to our mini class. So just taking that restrictor out, that changes the performance of the engine against that 60cc performance. And then they've got their water-cooled engines as well. And they've also got a direct drive engine as well, which is the Vortex OKJ engine and OK engine. The problem with the direct drive engine is that it's got no clutch. So when you do have a spin, you're out of the race. Like if you come to a complete stop, you can't then just keep going. And that means also a push start engine as well. So something we used to see back into the 80s, 90s, and even the 2000s, we used to have quite a lot of those direct drive engines. We sort of then phased out of that by going to the clutch and the water-cooled engines. Now this is still a water-cooled engine, but it is a direct drive as well. So not 100% sure why they've gone that way with some of our high-performance classes there, but that's what they've actually gone through. Now also what we've seen in recent times over the last probably 10 or 15 years is we've actually got a 6-speed gearbox category. So different manufacturers in that category. You've got a TM engine out of Italy, the Vortex brand. You've also got Medina, which is also an Italian brand. It's like an old motorbike engine, so 125cc, 6-speed gearbox engine. Now, the really cool thing about these ones is you've got a standing start, and the clutch is only going to be used for the starts. And basically also first gear is going to be used just for the race starts and sometimes, but very rarely in the wet weather conditions, because it's got such high torque It's only suited to getting off the start line. So going from a standing start, getting initial acceleration going, and when you're going down through the gears to get to the start line, you actually find that neutral is in between the first and the second gear. Now, the really cool thing about these shifter kart engines is that the power to weight ratio is ridiculous. It's something like a Formula One car for our karting scene, because they can reach speeds up to 110 mile an hour, upwards of 170 kilometers an hour, depending on the straights they're going to be driving on, and they go from 0 to 100 in about 4 to 4.5 seconds. So incredibly fast off the line, and also the deceleration that you can use the gearbox to slow the kart down a little bit. Things happen very, very fast. When you're thinking about some of the tracks that we've got here in Australia, you might be having a 40-second lap, yet you're having about 35 gear changes in that 40-second lap. Hence why that power to weight, you can see how things are happening very, very fast. And that's why we're still seeing a lot of our V8 supercar drivers, and also overseas a lot of Formula One and IndyCar drivers going back to a shifter category in the karting, because it's hard on your body, it gets your reflexes going very, very fast. So they're trying to replicate what they drive from day to day with their IndyCar or their Formula One cars, but you can't just go in and jump in those cars and just drive every day. So they jump back into a kart and they can experience those high speeds and in a different environment. Now, the last engine that we quickly touched on at the very start was our 4-stroke engine. So one of the biggest manufacturers of them worldwide is the Briggs & Stratton. Massive in the US, the Briggs & Stratton engines. In Australia, we've got a Torini version, which is our version of the 4-stroke engine. But what's really cool about these classes, it's a low performance class, but they just run all day. Like, I think it's something along the lines of about 200 hours before you actually have to have a rebuild of the engine. And basically by that stage, you're better off just, throwing it out and basically just starting again with the engine that you've got. So the 4-stroke category with the overseas Briggs & Stratton engines, they're all factory sealed. So you can't do anything to them. That's what you buy. That's what you go and drive on the track. And they provide some of the best racing because there's no real variance in engines. And it's like that Moto 3. It's like watching 15 karts in a line. It's very, very close racing, and that's what it sort of provides. And it's at a low cost. So great for the entry level, great to start off into the sport of kart racing before you want to see if you do like it or not. You want to step up into those faster categories. The Briggs & Stratton and Torini engine for Australia, the 4-stroke class is a great way to start out in the sport. So that's just sort of a quick rundown on the different engines that we use in our kart racing. Like I said, we can go all the way from a single speed class in 2-stroke engines all the way through to a 6-speed gearbox category. The speed's going to vary from about sort of the 85 Ks for a little micro cadet category, all the way up to about 160, 170 Ks for our KZ shifter category as well. So big thanks for tuning in to our Kart Class podcast. I'm your host, 18-time Australian champion David Serra. If you want to know more information or follow us on our social media channels, feel free to follow us at Kart Class on Instagram and TikTok. And if you've got any questions, just shoot them through to info@kartclass.com. We happily help you out. Until next time, thanks very much for listening.
If you've enjoyed today's episode and want to learn more about your kart racing, be sure to check out kartclass.com.au for driving courses catered to all skill levels.